Welcome to the Phoenix Downbeat. I'm Drew Kreisman alongside my brother Ira Kreisman. You know us as the Everything is Final Fantasy podcast, and we are joined by Ryan Laney of Airship Overdrive. Check out maybe not all immediately, unless you're really feeling like binging some music and going through his entire catalog. I mean, do it. Challenge yourself. It's still the holidays, right? Check out all that Airship Overdrive stuff on the YouTube and good stuff. Hey, today on the show, we got our marching boots on. We're talking marches. Right here in the month of, January. Look, you can't plan everything out exactly right. We're talking about marches, and I feel silly asking the question, but it is kind of what podcasts are for, and certainly the way Ira and I tend to operate with definitions, because I feel like almost everybody knows what a march is, but do we? So Ryan, apart from walking forward in organization, what's a march?
Yeah, this is a really good question that if you talk to music theorists, music composers, conductors, etc., you'll probably get 1,000 different answers if you ask 1,000 different people. And a march, I would argue, is one of the world's most utilitarian pieces of music or genres of music you can imagine. And for those at home, I'm going to put Drew on the spot here. How would you define the word utilitarian exactly?
So in my field of study and in philosophy, right, utilitarianism is described in its most basic as the most amount of good for the most number of people. When you're talking about morality or ethical decision making, a very common example of it. And frankly, most people operate on utilitarianism when making decisions with their friends and family most of the time. The common example is if we're going to order a pizza and I say, I'd really love to have a pepperoni, but I'm fine with sausage. And you go, I really don't like pepperoni. I only want sausage. Then we get sausage. That's the utilitarian thing to do because now everyone will be happy as opposed to making the decision where only one person will be happy. And if you really want to get into measuring things with utils and reading, is John Stuart Mill, right? I'd have to get into it. I don't know. It's been a minute for me. I'm getting older and further away from college every single day.
But you're like spot on, where utilitarian basically is what is the purpose that something serves? Is it helping people? Is it providing you easier methods to pursue a goal of some kind or provide a service in some cases? And marches, they derive and they come from this long musical lineage of being very utilitarian in three senses that I would categorize. And the only other things that I can think of in music that are as utilitarian as a march would be something like a working song. If you think about, I've been working on the railroad, because it's something that will kind of like, it'll unify people doing something that might require a rhythmic component to it, like driving stakes into a railroad, or something like a parent's lullaby to a child, because the words and the tone and even the notes selected, they all serve what purpose when you're singing to a young child? Like a lullaby.
They'll fall asleep eventually.
Exactly. The goal is to get them to fall asleep. And so it's a very utilitarian thing. It's not like going to a party and there's just some song in the background that can kind of just do whatever, even though it itself has some utilitarianism of get people upbeat, And so marches, I would argue, have three utilitarian senses. One, it is for the kind of like spectacle of things, of showing off, oh, here's something great, grandeur, wonderful, and generally upbeat. You can get down the rabbit holes of like a funeral march or a dirge and things like that, but we're going to limit ourselves to kind of like the typical upbeat march. It's also something that, again, will keep things in time. If you have a marching band or if you have something happening to a beat, something like a rifle guard or color guard for something militaristic. And third, which kind of goes into the same realm as that first one I mentioned, is a blatant sense of nationalism, or something that is either on the small scale, like a school having their fight song for the marching band to play, or a large scale of like, America or the Soviet Union or some other country or nation providing something. And so because it hits those three things off the bat, then it's designed to basically say, here's how great we are. And I wanted to start off this episode, as far as our musical stuff, by showcasing something that's an actual recording of the March King himself, John Philip Sousa, and a brief little snippet of his band.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. This is John Philip Sousa. and I'm very glad to be here with my band, representing my own country, America, on this international program. When the Bond Bakers asked me to transcribe my voice and my band for this unique occasion, I was greatly honored because I realize, as Mr. Taylor has said, that some of the finest bands in the world have been engaged to play for you. I hope, however, that you will enjoy hearing me again as much as I always enjoy playing for you. I've been asked to begin with a march that is an old favorite of mine. Maybe you will recognize it.
Yeah, and that's Stars and Stripes Forever, played by some members of Sousa's band. And Drew and Ira and myself, we've all been involved when we were younger in high school bands, marching bands, etc. I myself was a band director for 10 years. And you might have noticed that in that recording there was something particularly missing. Did you guys catch anything where it's like, oh, there's something like missing here?
No drums, no snare.
Yeah, there were no drums. And typically for most, what I'm going to call a military style march, is you have to have a percussion section pretty much every time. It's loud, it's bombastic, it has its own like literal roots in stuff going back millennia about having drums on the battlefield. Think of drum and fife stuff we've discussed on the podcast before. And it's missing here. Why would you guess that a recording made in 1929 didn't have drums on it?
Tough to record, I imagine.
I was going to say, I can't imagine what that would sound like on a recording back then. Just brutal.
For you guys and for listeners at home, go down a rabbit hole if you so desire of how they actually recorded Sousa's band when he was still alive. They basically got them, and it wasn't even the whole band. It was like a select group of maybe between 16 and 30 people. And they got them in this tiny little room with a little, primitive phonograph setup type thing or phonogram and had them play. And they literally could not have percussion playing because it would basically drown out everything else in these tiny rooms. But they couldn't just set up the phonograph to be outdoors listening to an actual concert, because the recording quality would not be anywhere close to what is needed as far as the closeness, the compression, etc., of what a phonograph actually needed in order to put sound on vinyl. And so, of course, we have better recordings these days, but you'll never find a proper recording of Sousa's band when he was alive. Are there anything you guys want to talk about before we jump into some actual selections and talk about marches more?
For me, a definition of march requires a very strong downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because you got to know when to put your left foot down. Like I said, I was in marching band for all of my high school, and so we had parade shows. And the only one I can remember is is Semper Fi. We did that song. Just runs through my head for no reason every once in a while. I don't remember the full. We had what we called the America show that year, and we were playing a lot of military tunes. We did Wild Blue Yonder and the maritime theme, and we had some seniors play taps, which was very emotional for some folks in the crowd. But the dun da 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 dun da 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 will just run through my head because it's so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, it's catchy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like catchy. It gets into your blood. It's just like right there. It's funny you mentioned doing the America show. There was a joke when I was in graduate school. The guy that I was basically working under, he had a joke that he was like, when you guys go out into the world and you have your jobs teaching bands at high school or colleges or whatever, the year that you're up for tenure, you have to do what's called the tenure show, which is basically do anything that's patriotic or Americana, and then it's going to be that much easier for your higher ups to say, yes, this person should continue teaching here.
That's fantastic.
Get tenured. Yeah, it's a good little in joke. Drew, do you have anything else that you wanted to add about marches?
No, but when you were talking about the recording process, I just had that line from "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" run through my head. You go in there, he'll pay you $40 to sing into a can. That's my contribution thus far. Which one of these we want to start with here?
Let's see. Yeah, we've got 3 lined up to start, and then we're going to do our usual kind of 3 surprises that we've each chosen for each other. And I think, honestly, the one that starts off that's going to be the most like stereotypical marching band march is Rufus's Welcoming Ceremony from Final Fantasy VII. and then it loops. What a good march to start off with. It has all the elements that you're expecting. We got our percussion section, we've got some upbeat, nice catchy melodies, and honestly, it's something that, much like a lot of John Philip Sousa and the Carl King marches of that age, you could easily transcribe these to piano. And something that's not often discussed is that a lot of the ways that Sousa kind of funded himself and funded his band when he would become an independent traveling band was he would sell transcriptions of his marches for piano. And eventually it became the kind of thing where he would sell transcriptions for stuff like accordion and zither and clarinet duet. Anything that his publisher would look at and say, yeah, if there's a market for this, they would make a transcription or an arrangement of it, and it would just flood the markets because his music was that popular.
Cool.
That's awesome. Been a minute since I've heard the word zither also.
I noticed that this piece has that piccolo, it's not a riff, but trill.
Trill, yeah.
Yeah, that you hear a lot in Sousa pieces. It also has the very classic bum bum, bum bum, brrrr, bum.
Yep, the roll off. Yep, it's so good. And
yeah, we did in marching band all the time. I mean, I didn't do it. I was low brass,
but it's all the things that you go with a march, right? Yeah. This is also pretty closely related to how an actual Sousa march was written, as far as like your introduction, A, B, and then potentially a dogfight or the C section of the song. And it follows those pretty darn well. And already this is aligning to those three things that we need for it to be something that's like a quote unquote military march, as we're defining it here. It's something that's kind of nationalist, even though it's for like Shinra and it's for Rufus. You could say that is in a sense corporate nationalism. Yeah. It's showing glory to an organization of some kind. It's something that you could easily keep time to, and there's literally a marching section, which we've all played Final Fantasy VII. You've played through that part. Yeah. And it's something that is upbeat, catchy, and it kind of keeps that whole, just like, look at how great this thing is. It's eye-catching or ear-catching, I guess, and it just works, right?
Yeah. And this is one of those classic, like you said, it's a show of power. It's a show of nationalism. Although they are the corporation in this world, Rufus Shinra is essentially not just the president of Midgar. He's the most powerful person in the world. And this is the celebration of his rise to power. So I think there are also a lot of fun, little interesting undertones, because like you said, on top we get this very nationalistic, isn't everything great and grand and wonderful, and then there are these tiny little bits where Uematsu reminds you that this is a corporate fascist empire takeover of the world, and they're like showing their military might. And this is also a real thing that strongmen in the world will do, right? Is parade down the middle of the streets with their military playing the national anthem to show how strong they are. And so this is a Final Fantasy VII's version of that. And what a piece of music, man.
And on that same front, this is actually a great segue into other nationalities' marches that kind of are in this line. If you don't mind, Drew, go ahead and queue up in whatever order you'd like. There's a Brazilian march and then the Imperial Japanese march that I've shared. And just play a little bit of each of those to your heart's content. And these are basically marches that are still in that same style, that same militaristic style. And yet for most of our listeners, I'm assuming most of our listeners are from America or another English-speaking country. And you'll hear that even places in South America, in Asia, in other places, they have a very similar strain, a very similar DNA to how their marches are constructed. Give us a listen. So what's kind of odd about this one right off the bat?
It's got lyrics.
Yeah, it's got a vocalist for some reason. That's one thing. And there's something else that might not be as obvious as the vocalist. Did you catch something else
odd about the tempo, but I'm not sure I could put my finger on it.
Tempo was pretty normal, pretty typical, close to 120 marching tempo. Ira, did you catch it?
I don't think so.
It's an instrumentation thing, if that helps clarify anything.
The trumpet?
The trumpet was the most normal part of it.
It seemed normal. It's just that there was only one of them. I'm used to there, but it's kind of, it felt almost more like a pop song version of a march or something.
You're on the right track. There was an electric bass playing the bass part in this.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah. And so what this was is, I don't know the full story of this. This was a song that was played in the mid 1900s in Japan. And it was something that was like one of the biggest radio hits for decades. And they recorded this particular version of it in a recording studio, which is why Ira just said there should be more trumpets. There should be more, stuff going on. But it was basically a small, I'm going to say, quote unquote, pop band or rock band with like a little drum set with a little bass player, and then only one or two of each typical instrument plus a vocalist. So even if it's not the same style, you can still hear that and go, oh, this sounds like a military march, even if it's slightly different than what we correlate to like a Sousa style march. Let's give this next one a listen, though, a Brazilian march now. And yet again, what do we have added on this one?
Well, they're singing, but there's a lot of voices this time. So that feels more in line with a march for whatever reason to me.
Yeah, this one's way more in that more standardized style of like a full, maybe 40 plus piece marching band is playing it. And I say marching band loosely. Most of these bands, military bands, don't actually march, but we're still going to use that term as like a common ground. But it's got a typical 40 plus piece marching band and vocalists going on top of it. And of course, all the music, this is the Brazilian march, is designed to say basically, look how wonderful our country is, look how great we are. And that's a running strain throughout all of these things, right?
It almost feels like a national anthem. I don't know what the Brazilian national anthem is, but we have lyrics to our national anthem, right? But ours is, as you pointed out several episodes ago, based on an old drinking song, which is an interesting dichotomy. Hard to march when you've been drinking.
And even songs that are like of John Philip Sousa ones, a lot of those also had lyrics, even though a lot of them have kind of faded from popularity. But even like Stars and Stripes Forever has, let martial note with triumph float and liberty extend its waving hand. A flag appears mid thunderous cheers, the banner of the Western land. It's actually got lyrics for the entire thing with like 7 refrains. It's actually pretty lengthy.
Wow. I was today years old when I learned. I did not know that one. I know that there are several songs that have more like the national anthem and America the Beautiful have a lot more verses than people tend to know, but I did not know that one. So
yeah. My little bit of trivia on that one too is that the original printing they did of the words to Stars and Stripes Forever, the part in the middle where it goes bump ba-da-da-dum, bump ba-da-da-da-dum, originally the lyrics were death to the enemy, and they sent out one printing of that, and some parents, or for some other reason I don't really know the full reason, they were kind of like, this seems kind of intense, and so they changed it to something else. I forget what it was now, but even Sousa himself, if he wasn't the one writing the lyrics, he often wrote his melodies kind of with a lyrical intent behind it, which is why they're so memorable, so easy to sing and hum along to.
Since you brought up that point on the vocals, and that's where we are, I have got to play this version of Rufus's Welcoming Ceremony from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
I like that drumline intro. We got the double roll off, and then we get a little bit of cool drumline stuff, and we're back to the chorus, right? So that again, you pointed out, Ryan, that there are in fact lyrics to some of our Americana military marches, but we tend not to think of that. I tend to associate that more with the Soviet Union, and this feels to me vaguely that kind of Soviet choir that I think sounds really cool, but might have some unimpressive, potentially problematic overtones. It has that vibe to it to me.
So it's funny you mentioned that. Do you want to talk about Soviet style marches now, or when we get to one of our later marches that I was expecting it to be discussed about?
Well, I mean, we've kind of gotten the nationalistic, almost jingoistic nature of some of these marches. I think we have to talk about a little bit. You know, as we listened to, Imperial Japan had their own nationalistic march. We've got ours. And I do think there's something interesting about a Japanese storytelling company like Square or Square Enix using what sounds to me like an American musical style to paint the bad guys. Rufus is very much not a good person. He swoops in on his father's death like 10 minutes after it happens. He takes control of the company, which means he's taking control of the city, which means he's taking control of the surrounding area. Final Fantasy doesn't always really have nations because the maps don't work that way. But it is very much, he's the bad guy, but he gets this upbeat march, which feels very much to me like a Sousa march. So I don't have an answer to this question. I'm not trying to lead to anything in particular other than to ask the question about, is there something to be said? Is there a comment being made about this style of music? And does it have to be negative? It feels kind of negative.
Negative as in like the style of the music or like the intent of how it's being used?
Yeah, what it gives voice to, the imperialism it gives voice to, because these marches are often associated with an empire of some kind.
Right. So there's a whole mess of stuff to go into that question. Like that could be, like, there are literal dissertations about this exact topic. Okay. And I'll just go ahead and kind of cut into this right now then, because it leads into it fairly well. But there is an old Soviet Union composer who has passed away long ago named Dmitry Shostakovich. And Shostakovich had a very unusual relationship with like Stalin, kind of the whole Lenin crowd and whatnot around the time when, you know, kind of the I guess basically from, you know, early to mid 1900s, essentially. And he, from a very, very young age, was identified as someone that had strong musical talent, which he absolutely did. And he was trained to basically say, hey, you're going to write music for the Soviet Union in a way that makes us look good. But Shostakovich, because of just simply, like, honestly, how smart he was, he wrote stuff that was very grand, very intense, and very much like a march style. But he also was kind of a common man on the inside. And he made a lot of these pieces in a way that basically said, here's this machine of war, and it's not good. But he was literally under the gun to write things that glorified this machine of war for the Soviet Union. And so when you listen to his stuff, it sounds very angular, is the way that I like to describe it sometimes, where it sounds like something you would hear in a typical Sousa march, but there's like one or two notes that are just kind of out of place, and it makes the whole thing seem very like off kilter, or like you're sitting on a two-legged stool of sorts. And there are some things that he even very, very adamantly put in where it literally sounds like the gears of some large machine actually turning, whether it was a percussion instrument or the actual instruments. Like he would use frequently, is it collegno, I believe, where you play like a cello or a bass with the actual stiff part of the bow, and it makes this very nice kind of chopping sound. The easiest thing I can think of that is an example of this is the very beginning of Holst's Planet's Suite, the best piece of music ever made, in my opinion. And the Mars movement starts with the cellos and basses, and it's this very mechanical sound to it. What we're going to listen to here is a selection from Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony. I believe it's the last movement. And before we listen to it, do listen for anything that sounds very angular or very foreboding, very wartime. But also, I recommend for the viewer at home, first or afterwards, listen to a theme from the Star Wars sequels that's called like the March of the Resistance, or the Resistance's theme. And you're gonna hear this theme that Williams basically pulled straight out of this march right here that goes bum 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 ba da dun dun da da dun da 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 dun 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 da da dun da da dun da 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 dun dun. And I'm not going to play it here because we're going to get an absolute copyright strike for playing Williams for playing Star Wars. But compare the two and think of why he might have pulled something from a Soviet-era Shostakovich march, a concert or orchestral march for that theme. Give it a listen. Now, not quite the same march style we've heard, but it has a lot of march elements, right? What do you guys hear that's like march-y, but not quite here?
In the beginning, we had a very strong downbeat. I don't know if it stayed that whole way, but I felt like the tempo, the beat, all that stuff was there. We had the high piccolo frills. That's always fun. A lot of the same nationalistic sounds and some of the same instrumentation, but for some reason felt a lot more intimidating and frankly darker, and just probably because, as you said, I associate that sound with the sound of the Empire from Star Wars coming to get you, especially when those strings really start going. I was like, that's the Death Star.
Yeah, and before Ira says his bit on this, two things that Drew just mentioned that I'll speak to is the first one sounding very like nationalistic, but yet sounding dark. It's in a minor setting. It's in a minor key in this particular area. 5 1 2 lowered 3 flat 3. So right off the bat, it's going, oh, this is intense. Most Americana style marches are not in a minor key; they're in a major key. So that's the first thing we've got. And second, when Drew just said, oh yeah, there was a strong downbeat and then it kind of went away. Something that Shostakovich would do a lot is like in his, quote unquote marches, is he would put this sense of unpredictability into it, much like the unpredictability of war, of, hey, you might have a wonderful flourishing village one day and then hours later decimated with nobody left surviving. And he put that in there as a way of saying, guys, this is not right. Like, this is not good what we're doing. But again, because he was such a good composer, he was under the gun to write it in these ways that made it still sound like it was, all glory to the Soviet Union, basically. Ira, was there anything else that you heard there?
I just really like that story you're telling of Shostakovich. There's something heartening about the music of the Empire being undercut by the artists who are being required to put it together. The Rufus theme, the Rufus Parade March, feels very upbeat and optimistic, and that's obviously a veneer, right? That's hiding what's going on underneath. And so, in a way, having an artist sort of undercut that feels more honest, making it sound more ominous feels more honest. And I actually feel like some of the Final Fantasy marches we're going to talk about later are deliberately more ominous and therefore more honest. And I think that's interesting, but maybe not necessarily more honest in that it is expressing what the Empire is, but maybe less honest in that empires don't express themselves that way. So you got to get an artist in there to stick a fork in the gears, as it were.
There's a fantastic book I recommend to Ira or to anyone else who finds this exact concept fascinating. It's called Shostakovich and Stalin, The Extraordinary Relationship Between the Great Composer and the Brutal Dictator by Solomon Volkov. It is a fantastic book that dissects this exact stuff and explores those exact relationships between what Shostakovich was expected to do and what was, actually happening under the covers, so to say, as far as what he snuck in or the things that he was trying to communicate very, very secretively, sometimes very what's the word, steganographically. Ooh, there's one for your next Scrabble night.
That's a good one. Since you led me so perfectly into this other bonus piece that I had here, and you were mentioning some subtlety and a book that people can go and check out if they really want to get into the nuances of it. How about a far less subtle way of doing that with another version? I remember Rebirth and Remake, they can't just do one new version of it. They do like 5 of everything. Everything's over the top. It's fantastic. But what they do here is not especially subtle, but I still absolutely love this rendition of Rufus's Welcoming Ceremony.
That's so good. And what is that little song that they kind of snuck in the middle there?
Yeah, that's the Shinra attack march piece. That's the like we're getting ready to march on weapon and get ourselves killed piece.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I think is it played during one of the infiltrations, like when they like parachute into Shinra or Midgar later? It's played somewhere else in the game too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of just the general Shinra military, because Shinra has its own theme that is actually part of that bum bum ba da 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 dum, right?
Yep.
But this is almost always when they're about to do military nonsense, and so
you guys, Drew just showed off a fantastic level up in his musical repertoire. Do you notice how he just pointed out the Shinra theme that we've heard in the like doom 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 doom
Yeah.
and he caught it in another song?
Yeah.
Let's go, Drew.
Yes. But I just love that they kind of smash those two pieces together, because one is, it's kind of like I was just saying, the Rufus Welcoming Ceremony is very much the veneer, it's the projection, what we want everyone to see, and then this other march is what we're doing out there on the battlefield when people are hopefully not paying as much attention.
This is actually a really good segue. I'm going to ask that we go into the Rebel Army one here coming up, because something that we just heard in that last march, like kind of like that middle part where it's like the Shinra infiltration, Shinra military stuff, is it's mostly set in a minor key, but then every now and then they'll have this little break in the middle where it's like a properly major setting, whether it's a proper modulation or just a simple key shift, but we have a major setting that kind of tells the listener, hey, it's going to be a tough experience. It's gonna be a tough ordeal because it's mostly in minor, very downtrodden, very the world is against you, but we are ultimately sort of what's the word? We are validated, or we are, righteous in our pursuit. And you can look at that from obviously the perspective of Shinra and them saying, hey, what we're doing, we are, personally vindicated in this. And you can look at it from the perspective of Avalanche and Cloud and crew and say, hey, this is gonna be a tough battle, but we are the ones who are vindicated and we are righteous in our efforts, which of course is what makes conflict in any story. But this is also something that they do in the Rebel Army March from Final Fantasy II. Short and simple.
Man, those old 30-second loops sure are something, aren't they?
Yeah, what are y'all's thoughts on that one?
I love that song.
I like it.
Yeah.
There is something classic and heroic about it. And I don't want to, I've looked down upon, said some negative things about marches. And I don't want to make it sound like I think they're all jingoistic and bad. And I do think there are some, there is some proper or appropriate use of force in some regards if people are being held against their will, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, it can feel heroic to march to a beat and have the righteous cause and stand up for it no matter what. And then I feel like some of these marches do get that sense across.
Yeah, I've always loved this piece. There's something about its melody that it just feels like, it rouses you up. It gets you going. It makes you feel. I actually saw, I think in the other version of this that we're going to play, a comment on the YouTubes that said, this piece of music makes me feel patriotic for a fictional country.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And there's something else before we listen to the Distant Worlds version that we're going to play here in a second. So there's something that they do in this that I know just a minute ago I mentioned how John Williams, the composer for Star Wars, he borrowed a lot from Shostakovich. In fact, he did a lot from Shostakovich in a lot of his films, not just the Star Wars franchise. But in this case, Uematsu might have taken something from Shostakovich. And earlier when I was singing that little melody from Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony we just heard, where it's in a minor setting and it goes 5, 1, 2, 3, bum 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 ba-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-ba. Then there's more after it. This one, literally the first 4 notes you hear are 5, 1, 2, 3, da 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 da, and yet it's that exact same little motif of bum 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 bum. So anytime you hear that, it's like built into our DNA, our musical DNA, to go, oh, this sounds like it could be a march, but it's not exactly a happy one. And wouldn't you know it, the rebel theme from Star Wars, the rebel theme from Final Fantasy II, and the, I'm going to say in quotes, rebel theme from Shostakovich, they all start with those same 4 notes in sequence.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. Do you want to listen to this other version of it?
Let's listen to it. Oh, it's so good. And that version, it's at the end of like a medley is what they do in the Distant Worlds version. What a great song to choose as like your big finale to an 8-minute long medley piece.
It's so good. It reminds me a lot of, I think I mentioned certain 90s movie music in the past. This one put me in particular mind of the soundtrack, if you remember it, from The Man in the Iron Mask. I just looked it up as well. We were listening to this. Is done by somebody who used to work a lot with Hans Zimmer named Nick Glennie Smith. I didn't know his name before, but looking over this, done stuff for Transformers, X-Men, Pirates of the Caribbean, Man of Steel. So it's like, yeah, it's got that kind of vibe when you put all those heroic, triumphant things together. It's such a vibe. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. There is something I will say about like the original NES version where it's like basically just 2 voices, no percussion. There's something very like melancholic about it, where it's like, hey, we're the little guys and we're gonna fight, but we might not all make it. That I think the full version, even though I love that full arrangement of it, doesn't quite have. And there's something very like heartstring pulling about like, here are these 2 little voices on this little, tiny 8-bit chip, and it sounds so small and like puny in comparison, but in a good way, in a very like thematically appropriate way for a piece like this.
I feel like the bigger, more orchestral version is the version of when you've finally done it, and now you get to march home and be with your family, and it's a little more of a relief, sort of a heroic relief, because we've done the thing.
Yeah, agreed. And if we're good on those ones, we've got one more we've prepped. What are we looking at here for our last one, Drew?
You know what's funny? Way back a gajillion years ago when we first started our podcast and we were talking about this piece of music, I remember I called it the March of the Red Wings from Final Fantasy IV. And Ira went, is it actually called the March of the Red Wings? And I said, no, it's not. I just said that. And it's fascinating because it's at the very beginning of the game and you're flying. But still,
Your feet
here
are
it is on the March episode. So 7 years later, I win. So good.
Spicy. This one's a little bit different. How is this one different from a purely like musical stance? What'd you guys pick out?
It's intimidating. It's deliberately, don't mess with us. We're going to steal your crystal and kill your elders.
Straight up.
I'm not sure how the instruments convey that, but they frickin' do.
Drew, any thoughts?
Well, this one has always put me in mind of the other big march that will get demonetized for playing from Star Wars. Of course, the very famous one, right? Their Imperial March, the Darth Vader famously walking off the ship and all those people lined up. And this has, I feel like a similar vibe and structure, though I have no idea exactly how. That's, you're here for those things.
Yeah, this one, quick little piano check here. How does this sound? Sound good? So on this march, it has a couple things that are a little bit unusual. The first one being that it starts with these descending chromatic passages. We're heavily based in kind of a G minor, G ambiguous type thing. Which alone, just having that one continuous, what they call a pedal tone, is very like foreboding, very like, here's something so big and powerful, it literally can't move or can't change. Is something that they'll commonly do in settings like this. So we're heavily based in G, but we also have these little parts that come in with the, and that's just chromatic scales in a major third harmony, but it's going down. Imagine if we had it the other way, where it was this big thing that was going up instead. What does that make you feel instead?
Oh, I don't know. That was unsettling. That was very unsettling. Yeah. Hyper tense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's something like ratcheting up. There's some sort of anxiety going up because you have upward motion. Almost like you're doing like the Super Mario 64 stairway that never quite, ends sort of thing.
Yeah.
If it's going down though, then you have that sense of forebodingness, because to our kind of innate self, the bottom has a stop eventually. But if you go up, it can just keep going forever, which is why ascending music can generally, not always, feel more anxiety or tension inducing than going down music, because going down makes you kind of instinctively think, oh, there is a stopping point eventually. Up can just keep going forever though, in theory. And so throughout this whole part here of like the main part, it's a pretty straightforward construction actually with how this melody is built around the harmonies with it. And it's almost very grand. There's not very fast motion in the melody. There's not very like intense chromaticism. There's even a really great little spot where we get one of my favorite kind of Lydian sounding chords. Oh, I love that chord there. Because you want to go back down to the third. And just when you think it's all is well, we come back to those ba, 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 ba in the background. Then you go to the B section and things just totally go out the window. Instead of having this nice stable root chord, we have this to start off with the next section. We're based around a diminished 7 chord, which is really tough to do and to linger on for so long, but everything is literally based around. And then it's moved around a little bit to some other diminished chords. But they also do something else really weird in this section. Did you guys catch the other really bizarre thing that happens?
No, almost certainly not.
It's not in 4/4 time anymore. It's in 7/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. They cut out a beat. And now what does that kind of relate to that I mentioned earlier with Shostakovich?
Right. The undercutting of the machine.
Right.
It's the machine moving, and it's another UN something word. It's very unpredictable.
Oh, yeah.
When you start changing time signatures, which for me, I love Rush, I love Dream Theater, I love prog rock, and I love changing time signatures, but it instills this sense of uneasiness or unpredictability when it's done correctly. And in this case, we're in a very unsettled key base, being in a diminished setting, and in 7/4 time. So we've broken away from here's this big stable unit, this big, massive force that's coming to take you. And what does this section probably make you want to think of instead?
The chaos of it all, the mess, the like you said, sort of the ugliness of the war machine.
Yes, it's literally the destruction, chaos, and things being torn apart. And then, of course, they finish that. The song loops because video game music has to loop in most cases. And suddenly it's back to, oh, here's the big triumphant, empire on to the next town to destroy. And they keep going back and forth between here's this big monolithic, unmoving, machine of the military. And then, oh, here's the actual stuff happening. If you think back to our episode about the Magitech facility with Final Fantasy VI, it's kind of like that, where it's very much like, here's the scene setting, but then here's the literal moments where things are getting vaporized and destroyed in between the loop throughout the whole entire section.
Ryan, does this piece also go back to paralleling Mars with the dun 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 dun?
Yes, combinations of triplets and duple is a great callback to Mars. The Mars, if anyone hasn't heard it, it's again, it's part of that planet suite. And actually, good catch, Ira, because Mars, I believe, if I'm correct, it starts in G minor, but it begins with a G5 chord. A G5 or any kind of 5 chord only has the root and the fifth. And so you can't internalize if it's in major or minor until something else gives you, in this case, either a B flat or a B natural. So if you just hear a 5 chord, it's ambiguous. It's like, oh, something's coming. It's very foreboding, like the Mars theme is, but we don't know what exactly is happening until the melody comes in. Bom, bom, bom. And it's like, whoa, a sharp 4? Something's not quite right here. And then eventually they fill out the harmony better.
Yeah. Distant Worlds.
Cookie. What did they put at the end there?
Oh, very clever. That's the Kingdom of Baron. That's just the music that plays as you're walking around in the kingdom while Cecil is having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. Which is also, by the way, another fantastic, like, glory be to, sort of thing, sort of a melody there. Da, da. It constantly has this rising motion of, like, here's where we were in the past, but we're always moving forward. Da, 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 da. Such good, like, that's in a textbook of, like, simple musical elements to throw in to make a march sound like a march. That's one of them, is constant uprising or going up motion.
I also felt like the B section would have fit very nicely into almost any other piece of music that we've listened to today. The two from Final Fantasy VII, especially, and then John Philip Sousa, the little bit that goes da 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 dum ba ba da bum bum ba da dum. It was like, yeah, that it sounds very much like the B or C sections to Rufus and the Shinra March and certain Sousa pieces. Like, that's good.
Yeah, that March DNA, it runs very strong that you could literally just like cookie cutter, chop out things and put them in different marches, and they're going to line up pretty well in most cases.
All right. Does that bring us to the part where we start guessing at stuff?
I think so. And I've requested to go last this time. Who wants to go first?
I think Ira should go first.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got a couple of guesses. Do you want to give us some hints or some setup before we guess?
I'll tell you a couple things I didn't pick. Because I kind of wanted to go more recent. I wanted to go 15 or 16. And I didn't, because I was listening to the Imperial Niflheim theme, and it feels to me more like a dirge than a march. It's got some snare behind it, but it's very sort of sad. It's as much about the boys finding out that insomnia has fallen as it is the glory of the Niflheim Empire. So then I looked at the Holy Empire of Sambrek, and they've got the Will of the Goddess is the name of the piece that feels like it could settle into a march, but it's more organs and harpsichords and strings with some snare drum in there also.
I considered that piece as well.
Yeah, and I think they're both great, but they didn't feel like marches to me. And like you were talking about, Ryan, it's not. You might get different answers about what does and does not count, but they didn't count to me. So those are the ones I didn't pick.
So you didn't pick one from 15 or 16 at all, or it's from 15 or 16?
I didn't pick one from 15 or 16 at all, but I did try to push outside of some of the stuff we've been listening to.
Okay, well, that takes out one of my guesses. Because I thought you might go to Final Fantasy VI, despite the fact that, there are so many good ones. There are some honorable mentions if we don't pick them there. Then I also thought of Tactics, though there's nothing that I think jumped immediately. There's a lot in that game that's battle hashtag march music. So I'm not sure which you would pick. I don't have a specific, but given what you just said, I'm going to guess Tactics.
Okay.
I was also thinking something Tactics for Ira of the many march style ones that are in that game, or maybe something from like Tactics. Is it 2 or A2 is the official one, like the GBA Tactics games?
Yeah.
But I'm gonna guess that Ira went with I believe it's called is it The Oath from Final Fantasy VIII? Jun 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 da 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 jun. It's either called Oath or Seed. Is it one of those?
Seed. Yeah. All right. Oh, now he's gonna send, and we're gonna find out.
That's right. It's called Seed. Oath is the like the starting music. I'll look it up later.
Okay.
Oh, it's something good.
It's something real good.
It's so good.
Oh.
So I'll tell you right now, I almost also picked this one because we tend to kind of expand out of just, mainline Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Those of us at home, this is Frog's theme from Chrono Trigger. And when I first, for my band Airship Overdrive, when I started doing little like shorts on like Instagram and Blue Sky and stuff, the very first one I recorded was Frog's theme because I love that song so much.
Oh,
Yeah.
Such a banger, such a fantastic piece of music. It's so old that we weren't using the word banger to describe pieces of music. But retroactively is one. Yeah, what a piece to pick.
Ira, why do you like this one so much?
It is, again, that heroic kind of march. I don't want to harp on it, but there's something a little nefarious about the nationalistic march potentially. But this one is this guy, and it's his journey, and he is a heroic dude, and he does do the right. It feels like if Superman had a march in a way. I mean, I know John Williams did all that, and there is some march tendencies towards some of those pieces, but it feels very, we're doing the right thing for the right cause.
Love it. Yeah, and of course, Chrono Trigger I think has one of the best soundtracks in all of gaming. It's so good. They made so much out of so little with that hardware technology they had. It's oh my gosh, I got to do a replay. I did a replay about this time last year, about a year ago. Is it already time for another one?
Always a good time to play some Chrono Trigger. Yeah, it also sounds to me like some sort of strange mix between like a march, like a samurai music, and like Celtic fairy music. It's like right in the center of all of those things, and that makes me very happy. And yeah, maybe we'll dive even deeper into it someday when we can do some run at some Chrono Trigger music, because man, Ira, you're a genius. You know how much it hurts me to have to say that publicly on a thing being recorded, but that it's such a good pick.
Yep, it's a march too. It's got that kind of upbeat marching rhythm to it. It shows glory to Frog in this case, or Glenn originally is his name. Sure. No, great choice,
man. Okay, so my pick is maybe not nearly as good. Well,
is it March to Chocobo from Chocobo Mystery Dungeon 2?
If only I'd been so clever. The handful of hints that I will give, since Ira gave some, is that mine's not quite as obviously a march. There are other versions of it that are more marchy, but there's no snare drum in mine. I'll just say that. As we're going to listen to it, or if there is, it's very much deep in the background, which made me think of not choosing it. But yeah, we'll see. That's the hint I'll give for now.
So what I will say is my initial guess when we were planning this episode, my guess for you was going to actually be Zidane theme from Final Fantasy IX, because it's very march style. It's very like, here we go, team. But I know it has some relatively prominent snare drum. Is the game one of the mainline games or a spin-off game?
It is a mainline game.
A mainline game march that doesn't feature snare drum.
I'm not 100% sure that either of you are actually familiar with the piece. I'll also say that. So it might be better to just guess a game.
So then 11 to 14. Because those are the ones I'm less familiar with.
Same.
Okay, I'll give you quarter points.
Something from 12, because you love the Star Warsian.
That's where I was going as well, with something from 12.
I heavily considered a piece of music from 12, but it's like 4 minutes long. And I think we should get into it another time. I thought Ryan might choose it also, but I'm thinking maybe not. So you just want me to come with it?
Just play. I'm at a loss.
Actually, let me do a little bit of setup to this, just because I do want to say a couple things. If you're not sensitive, this piece of music is from Final Fantasy XIV. If you two aren't sensitive to spoilers, I would say go ahead and watch it if you haven't played through Stormblood. This comes from the very end of Stormblood. There are multiple versions of this, some that do have the snare drum and are more obviously marchy, but this fits into that national anthem kind of march section. And the other thing that I think is important to know about it is it begins with a different set of lyrics. So you'll see too, the ones underneath them were the Empire's lyrics for when they overtook the song. What we're hearing here is once the people have spoilers, but it's a Final Fantasy game, won their independence, they get their own lyrics back.
So this is an interesting one because it also touches on something I vaguely discussed earlier about how like our purpose is vindicated, it is righteous, and something that's in this march here that I was looked at earlier is about how our internal struggles, like the struggle to make our homeland better, to improve the lives of those around us and ourselves, is a very righteous pursuit. And in the lyrics there, for the folks at home, look up the song. What's the song actually called, Drew?
The Measure of His Reach, or it actually, I think, gets turned into The Measure of Our Reach.
Yeah, and even the title right there says, like, here's what we can do. Here's, you know, the extent of what we, the people, the populace, we can pursue. It slots right into that whole concept of like, here's what we as a group can work toward and therefore bring glory to the homeland sort of thing. Even though in this case, of course, I don't know if this is particularly about like the little guy or about some empire singing it, but it absolutely fits that bill to a T.
One other interesting note on that piece is that there's only one or two professional singers that you're hearing there. That's largely just staff that were around that day because they wanted it to sound like the people were just singing as they were walking through the streets and taking their
Nice.
homeland back.
That's so cool. That's very Les Mis. Do you
Yeah.
hear the people singing the songs of angry men?
Right. So, yeah, I thought of several songs from 6 and 12 and 16. There were two that I really thought hard about from 16. There's a version of Dion's theme that is definitely a dirge more than a march. It is a slow death march straight into the lion's mouth. But there's also kind of a fun version that uses the Final Fantasy prelude in a very interesting way that kind of plays just as you're like on the map, or as Vivian Ninetails is telling you the history of things. I wasn't sure it would count as a march, but it's got a fun snare beat in it, and go check that track out if you're interested.
Nice. All right, guesses on mine. Or here, I'll give you the one hint I'll give. In the very first episode of Phoenix Downbeat we recorded about Liberi Fatali, I mentioned this song.
Oh no! Now if we don't get it, it's like we weren't paying attention.
That was years ago, you guys.
That is interesting. Okay.
I will note that almost none of us have ever guessed what the other one has come up with. We are really bad at figuring out what the others of us are going to pick.
Right. There's a lot of music, but I think it's happened once. But I was going to guess about the Empire's theme from 12 for you, and I considered it as well. So I don't think that one was ever mentioned, though. It doesn't fit our hint criteria.
I'll give you the biggest hint I can give without probably giving it away is that it contains the Liberi Fatali theme of
So it's one of the ones from 8. It's
from 8.
It's
well, and there's a presidential theme, I think, at some point. And is it the parade music? Is that a march? I don't think
you're
that's
awfully close. You are awfully close.
Like when they're marching down the street right before they try to tour and stuff goes really not well. All right, let's see what we got here.
This is the song that when I first started getting into music heavily as a kid, this was one of the ones where I was like, this sounds so cool. How does music work that it makes music and sound like this? Yeah, that is the stage is set from Final Fantasy VIII, and they do some sneaky stuff there where they sneak in the Liberi Fatali chordal theme in that place, and a couple of some odd situations because it's like not quite an 8-bar phrase. They kind of like hint at it, and then they do a little bit of a break, and then there's like a 6-bar version of it that they put afterward. But I love this song so much because the first time I believe that you hear it in the game is when they are setting up the assassination plot of the sorceress Idea, which is like right before the actual parade scene, or like kind of during when the parade scene happens and whatnot. And there's this sense of like, we know what our goal is. It's not a pretty goal. It's not something that's maybe desirable, but we also legitimately don't know what's going to happen next. And there's all these moments where it's just like the snare drum and a very simple string part, and maybe the timpani going ba-dum, 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 bum, bum. But there's just like this absence of a melody for long stretches of time, which makes me think that Uematsu wrote this as a way of like, okay, we're still on our mission, but the people in it, the literal children that are running this mission, they're still thinking in their minds of like, wait, but what's going to happen actually when we do this, whether we succeed, whether we fail? Like there's a lot of introspection built into those gaps in this song, which is so cool.
This one also feels to me like it's kind of the sneaky version of the Final Fantasy VII piece, but it's like the good guys are sneaking around for the first half of it, and then when the Libera Fatali chords come in, or it's like the sorceress's voice, it's almost like our heroes are sneaking around trying to do their plots, and like, oh, nobody sees us, and then the sorceress goes from the future, right? Ultimately, or whatever, spoilers. Yeah, I see you, or whatever. But it's interesting. It's a great piece of music, but it does feel in a way inverse to where the Final Fantasy VII ones feel like they're on the side of the bad guys. This one, at least until the sorceresses get there, feels like it's on the side of our heroes. We're sneaking around. We're, like you said, we're being introspective. We're doing a thing, a purposeful thing. And man, it's such a good piece.
That was one of the first songs I ever like transcribed back, little. I was probably around 12 years old or so, with my little tiny Casio keyboard that had like 40 keys on it, and trying to figure out how it worked. And I spent hours upon hours trying to transcribe that one song. And so I had a save file saved on my, little 8 kilobyte memory card that was saved at a spot in the game with that music playing. So I could always go back and just have the game running and listening to it.
That's how it's done. That's OG stuff. Yes.
Drew did something similar with the opera when we were kids. Had a little keyboard thing that I tried to figure out how to play the opera on.
Yeah, filled it around, figured that melody out. Yeah,
that's a tougher one. There's some like accidentals and some weird like actual harmony changes proper in that piece. That's not an easy one for your first one to transcribe.
I don't think I got much farther than bum 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. I was good there. I think that's where I cut it off.
I will say the other song I considered, in case it had been brought up naturally at some point, was doing Sid's theme from Final Fantasy VII, because it's a very like heartfelt march almost. But not quite the same vibe I think we were going for with marches.
That's the march that feels like it's reaching for the stars.
Yes, they literally do play it again when you're actually in space, and he's like, wait a minute, I did it. I am actually an astronaut. I'm in space now. And you hear his theme come back. Oh, it's so good.
So good.
I love it. I considered that one as well. There were so many. This is kind of the opposite of Towns, where I started with so many in mind and had to whittle it down. With this, I only had a few in mind at first, and as I researched and sought out, I ended up with a bunch that I considered. Since you didn't do that, I am going to sneak us one last bonus one, actually, though, because we're not going to be able to talk about it, but I did want to mention one other classic Final Fantasy piece of music that is often, but not always, a march. We know it. We love it. We'll listen to it in its entire some other time. But
I did consider a couple credits songs as my march as well. Final Fantasy VIII, speaking of Final Fantasy VIII, has a really good one that incorporates the main Final Fantasy melody in it. There are a lot that are just like, here's the glory of your successes, and then it's a march to end it out with some theme, usually from the game itself.
We will almost certainly do another episode on marches again someday.
Sign me up.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and thank you to everyone who has reached out to us. Hey, this was our 16th episode, and we plan to do for our 19th episode a Q&A or a comment and smorgasbord type of episode. We want to answer your questions or maybe play a couple of tracks, especially smaller, please no huge ones for us, but anything, especially if you think it's related to something we've already talked about. Let's keep it Final Fantasy music for now. In the future, we may have the opportunity to go outside of the franchise and ask Ryan about some stuff. But if you have any questions on things we've either already discussed or things you'd like to hear us discuss, that type of thing, with regards to Final Fantasy music, get those questions in the YouTube comment section, the Spotify comment section, or of course right there on the Patreon page or in the Discord. If you've already asked a question, I've probably got it logged, but make sure to re-ask it just in case so that I can get it on the episode, especially if it's one that you really want answered. Other than that, I want to, of course, remind you once again to subscribe to Everything is Final Fantasy on Patreon and Spotify and all that good stuff, and of course, Airship Overdrive as well. Make sure you're following along with all of Ryan's music there on YouTube. Make sure to join us next time as we ascend to meet the King of Dragons from Final Fantasy XVI.
Well, they're on a boat, so maybe they're rowing. It's a rowing theme.
You're a boat.